do you not like Tanzanians?
I'm going to start from the very beginning. I wanted to love Tanzania. I came here with the full belief and intention of falling in love with the country. I never came to a country with such high hopes. And I'm drunk right now, but I know how to keep a sober mind at least. I really wanted to love Tanzania. Came here with full ideas that I would love it. I've just been disappointed at every turn by how Tanzanians behave.
What do you mean, their behavior?
I understand that the country's natural resources are its wildlife and its geography. And so therefore, tourism is a big part of it. I understand that this country makes its money through tourism. Tourism is a big part of its industry. Because they have natural resources that are very rare, such as the safari, such as Kilimanjaro, such as Zanzibar, such as other places, these things are very valuable and therefore you can charge a lot for them. But the quality of the service and the things you can do here and the price you pay for them do not match. It's completely out of balance because there are many other places you can go and get way better quality of service and things to do for the price you pay. They far outseed what you can do here. And secondly, this is for Black people. As Black people, we all globally know what being Black means, as in that we all sort of know that we are in this particular situation, whether we are in the diaspora or whether we are from Africa. We all know that as Black people that we are at the bottom globally in all metrics, in all places, and that we all understand that there has to be some sort of unity or some sort of thing that will bring us to the next stage where we can advance beyond our situation. Because we all understand that we have boundless resources that can make us better and greater. And I'm not just talking out of my ass. While being here in Africa, I've heard ideas about Pan-Africanism from common people. I was watching the World Cup and some guy, drunk guy, started taking off his shirt and started yelling, "Africa rules the world," and all this sort of stuff.
We are African men.
We are African men, all this sort of stuff. When I'm in Mauritius, I hear an Indian man tell me, I am an African and Africa needs to come together and unite. When I'm in Tunisia, I'm hearing Tunisian people who are white as hell, saying that we are Africans and we can do better than this. So I'm not just talking out of my ass when I say this. And also when I say that, also I'm saying this because in America and also in the diaspora, in Europe, in the Americas, and every other place, we all understand that we have to make a change and come together to make a better situation for Black people. But how come when I come to Tanzania, there is still this worshiping of whiteness that is almost unparalleled in any other place I've been? I understand on one hand, the majority of people who come here and spend the $5,000 to go on a 3-day safari to look at lions and elephants eating apples out of a tree are white people. Yes, I understand that. I understand that you have to treat those people well because the majority of the people who come here to further your industry are white people. And that's because of how wealth is distributed in the world. The majority of the world's wealth is owned by white people. But why is there no sort of exception for the diaspora or people from the diaspora? Why is there no love for Africans? If I was Nigerian, if I was Senegalese, if I was South African, if I was Namibian, why do I have to pay the same price as this very same people or descendants of the people who raped and pillaged this very land to go and enjoy the natural resources and beauty that I was stripped of or that I don't have access to because of these arbitrary borders that were drawn by Europeans? My ancestors were literally captured by Europeans and transported somewhere else. And then hundreds of years later, I'm coming here. This might seem like a very extrapolated idea, or it sounds like I'm reaching to make it more simple for a reason to complain about the prices. Many people might say, well, if you don't have the money for Africa, if your money ain't long enough, why are you there? Motherfucker, your dick ain't long enough to talk to me. First and foremost, your flight miles ain't long enough to talk to me. I've been in many third world developing countries. If you don't believe me, check out my videos about Serbia, about Tunisia, about Turkey, about Mauritius. I am a third world citizen by choice. So don't come and talk to me about me being priced out. The point I'm just trying to make is that in Tanzania, there has to be a changing of this mindset of worshiping white people and excluding other Black Africans or descendants of Black Africans from enjoying the bounty that there is in Africa. Because the only thing Black men, Black people, people own in this world is a small subsection of a very large continent. Literally the only thing we own. We don't own our culture. We don't own our music. We don't own our intellectual property. We don't own our ideas. We don't even own our own bodies for a long part of history. The only thing that we have full control of is half of a very large continent. Tanzanians say Jambo, Karibu, Hakuna Matata to all the specifically white tourists they see. And there is not this same level of hospitality or regard shown to other black people within here. Listen, I'm not expecting everybody to look at me and assume that I'm a foreigner. I'm not saying that. And I'm not imagining if I was Senegalese or Mauritanian or Chadian or Malian or any other African here and expecting people to look at me without the tattoos and without the crazy outfits, expecting me to be a foreigner. But what I'm saying is, what does that say? You extend this hospitality and gratitude to white people when you see them, but to other black people when you see them, you don't do that.
I'm sorry to disrupt you, but we know that it's not gratitude and love. We know it's about money and tourism and work. It's the same way in Turkey. When people see a British family, they do the same stuff. So that's the reason when I don't want to say Jambo back to all of the people that says Jambo to me, because I know that's not coming from a place of love, but it's coming from a place of work and money and tourism.
I think by saying that, you would assume that everybody who says that is working in the tourism industry, because when we walk outside, little kids, 4 or 5, 6-year-old children are yelling Jambo and Caribou at you. Yeah. And they are definitely not working. That means that the children are being indoctrinated with this idea that when they see white people, that means prosperity, that means happiness, that means money, that means treat them well, treat them better. Now, I know on one hand that comes from the tourism industry, which is a big part of this whole country's economy and the majority of people that come in, but it also stems from this idea, this white supremacist idea that white people are inherently rich, powerful, have access to capital and money and that sort of thing. Number one, it's true. White people do have more of the global share of wealth, but what does that say to the mind of people here? How does that transform the black person's mind here? And once again, I wanted to love Tanzania when I came here, but when I see this cowtailing and this subservience, this bending of the knee to whiteness and wealth, it bothers me, because, and this is speaking from a place of bias, it's totally against what we have been going through back in the diaspora. Not just America, but all the way from America to Brazil, to Argentina, to Chile, and then to Europe as well, and every other place that we've been kidnapped and tortured.
I don't know, tell me what you think, but I feel like African Americans and Latin Americans, like all of the diaspora that you talked about just now, they have a very different sort of trauma than the people in Africa. Because people in Africa, especially like your generation and the generation after you, they were born in Africa. They didn't face any wars or anything like that. Of course, there is poverty, just like any other third world countries. But in general, they have been living in their own country like any other person. Like any other person that was born in Europe. If they didn't go out of their country, they just had a life, just a normal life. I feel like it's very different from what you guys are experiencing. I also feel like there isn't enough education for this right here. I don't know.
While you might say that, African Americans, Afro-Brazilians, Afro-Dominicans, Afro-Mexicans, Afro-Argentinians, and Afro-French people, Afro people in the UK, etc., might be facing a different set of circumstances, and the people here haven't gone through a war or haven't gone through racism. There is a global war that is happening upon the minds of everyone, not just black people, but everyone, and that is the war on the minds, the psychology of every person on the planet related to how whiteness is perceived. And the victims and casualties are all of us, and Africans are no exceptions. We've been here in Africa and we found bleaching cream. We've been here in Africa and we've seen how Africans treat white people aside to other people. And that goes to show that this indoctrination in the mind, this assault of the mind that is happening, is not just happening in the Americas or in Europe or in any other place where the Afro diaspora exists. is happening here as well. So while on one hand, I want to say, yeah, these people are just living in their country, living a normal life like any other people, like the majority of the world. The majority of the world is not living like an oppressed minority in a homogenous society that sees them as an outsider and sees them as the other. They are still being affected by the ideas that are spread out from primarily the centers of power and wealth and capital that happen to be white across the world.
I'm not denying that, of course. I'm just saying it's a different type of fight against the same thing, because when an African American is born in America, he's surrounded by all this like hate crimes and all of that you have been talking about in your channel. But an African here faces something different. It faces this love of white people and white supremacy and whatever. And it's just a different type of war. That's what I'm trying to say. And I feel like that is what separates your views from the Africans here. Because they cannot see the trouble that you have in your mind. Because they never experienced the same things that you did as an African American, being born in the most capitalist, maybe one of the most white supremacist nations. That's what I was trying to say. I'm not denying the effect of white supremacy.
I've never been a slave. I've never been denied the opportunity to go to a good school because of the color of my skin. I've never been denied to marry the person who I love because of the color of my skin. I've never been had a police knee on my neck. I've never been shot 6 times by the police while I'm going out with my fiance on our honeymoon. I've never had any of those things happen to me, obviously. The thing is, what informs us about our condition is not our lived experience, but it's about knowing about what happens to us in aggregate, in total. And as an African, you should have the same mentality. Tanzania is a poor country today, not because Tanzanians are lazy or stupid or that they stink, which they do stink. They smell very bad.
But we know they're not lazy.
They're not lazy. They're not stupid, and they're not inherently poor people. Africa itself as a whole, every country in Africa should be richer than the richest nations in Europe just off of their natural resources and location alone. We know for a fact that Tanzania is a poor country today from the rape and pillage that the UK did to this nation. So while the average Tanzanian might have never gone through the racism that we experienced in the diaspora, history informs us. What we know about what happened to us in total informs us. Like I said, I've never been through Jim Crow racism. I've never been a slave. I can still speak up for those things and how they still affect us today. And as a Tanzanian, you should be able to connect the dots and realize I have to walk through the streets in mud with no shoes, not because, we're bad people or we're lazy or we're poor or our country doesn't have shit. Luxembourg doesn't have shit. Tanzania shouldn't be poorer than Luxembourg, a country the size of a pea. It doesn't make sense. Do you get what I'm saying? So while you might say, oh, the Africans never dealt with any of that shit, so they're just living in their country, living their life, an informed person should be able to know, to be able to connect the dots. We are here because of X, Y, and Z in the past. Shit doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your country of Turkey didn't just appear out of nowhere. It came through conquest, it came through strife, it came through struggle, it came through fight, it came through defense, it came through many things. What happens in the past affects us today. So while some people, Tanzanians or Africans in general, might say that is the past and it's just corrupt African leaders, it's just people stealing money out of the pot, it's just people putting their hands in their pockets when the people need things. Yes, that is one thing, but you have corrupt leaders, you have uneducated rulers, you have a bad infrastructure because of things that have happened in the past, and we will never forget the past, and that is why we will constantly fight against these ideas.
All I'm trying to say is, can you also pour me some? But all I'm trying to say is, some African Americans can't think of the stuff that you say. So how do you expect real Africans to think of that stuff when they, I feel like, are trying to leave it in the past? Of course, always remembering a tragedy and all the bad things that people have done to you shouldn't be remembered all the time, but it should be remembered sometime. But I feel like people here do not want to remember that ever. I'm not trying to create a reason for their admiration of the white people. Of course I'm not, and it shouldn't be that way. But I'm just trying to understand why it's that way in here, but it's not like that in the United States. You know how you said, I don't know if Will Smith did that movie before he slapped Chris Rock or not, because he might have a point, because he did, you know, he might have a slave mentality on
angry.
him. He's angry. Like that. It's like the anger built up, but you use it against each other. That's what I observe. I don't know. I feel like you should take that, hold hands, and use it against white supremacy, if that makes sense.
If I understand right, what you're saying is that people here in Africa are trying to move on beyond the past, or don't have any connection to the past because it doesn't affect them. And also at the same time, what you're saying is that there's this anger because of what happened in the past that keeps us from working together from the diaspora to the continent.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
You know, divide and conquer.
Right.
It's still doing that, I feel like.
I understand what you're saying, and that's a very, very good point. And there's some legitimacy to that. There's a lot I want to say to answer that point. To the first point, and I'm struggling because I'm drunk as hell. I would have done this better if I was high, because I would have gotten deeper into my thoughts. My first answer is that while Africans might want to move beyond the past or not acknowledge the past, I will agree with that. Let's say I agree with the fact that Africans want to move beyond the past of colonialism and exploitation and slavery and all that stuff, right? Africans on the continent. What I will say here, from my experience, is that Africans want to move towards a future of Pan-Africanism. Because everything that I've heard from people in the streets, when I hear people say, welcome, they don't say, welcome to Tanzania, welcome to Dar es Salaam, welcome to Zanzibar. They say, welcome to Africa. These countries were not created by Africans. We are standing in a colonial construct. Tanzania was a creation by a few white people in a room who drew the borders between their other colony, Kenya, their other colony, Rwanda, and made a deal with the Portuguese in the south between Mozambique, and drew lateral lines on the map. These are not real countries in the sense that they were created by the people who actually live in these countries. You're Turkish. Where can all Turkish people go across the world to a homeland that they call their own? Where?
Turkey.
Where can all Swahili people go?
Yeah, bunch of countries.
A bunch of countries. Where can all Maasai people go? Where can all the other thousands of ethnic groups go to call their own countries? All Africans right now, in my opinion, from talking and listening and being outside, because I'm really outside with it, bitch. Not talking to you.
I know.
Not talking to you, but
I know.
I'm really outside, and I never hear people say, welcome to Tanzania. They say, welcome to Africa. Even if Africans are trying to move beyond the past, they are moving towards a future, or at least the idea is in the minds and hearts and words of the people of Pan-Africanism. But in practice, Pan-Africanism is not happening. Some people might watch this video, if this video is ever released, and just say, this nigga is just complaining that Kilimanjaro costs $2,000 to climb, and he wants his black ass to climb it for $5 or for free. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there should be some sort of idea that when visibly, identifiably, phenotypically, black people come to Africa, and when these people come from the diaspora or other parts of the continent, that they are treated just like the people here, because we all have the same fight. The fight in Sierra Leone, the fight in Cote d'Ivoire, the fight in Nigeria, the fight in Ghana is the same here in Tanzania. They are all 40, 50, 30-year-old countries trying to get their feet on the ground to create sustainable societies for their people. And for black people to be able to have some say in the world, because we are the voiceless, we are the dispossessed, and we are the oppressed. The second point I want to talk about, that you brought up, about anger between people, maybe that is a good point. Maybe there is, because one of the most powerful quotes I ever heard from a guy named Wayno, who's a media figure who talks about hip hop, is that all black people have some of the white man in us. Metaphorically and literally, we all have some of the white man in us. Whether that be in the diaspora or whether that be in Africa, the whole world has been infected with white supremacy, so we all have some of the white man in us. And I know this might sound funny to say, I'm more white than my white wife. I grew up around more what the world considers traditionally white people than my wife. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to say this as an insult to you, but what the world visions as white is what exists in my brain and what exists in my, unfortunately, not by design, not by choice, but in my heart because of where I grew up. Maybe there is some divide and conquer that is subconsciously between me and a Tanzanian. There's also a lot of ignorance as well. We've been here in Arusha for about close to a month, and the power goes out constantly. I was just watching an interview last night from the only black male billionaire in America named Robert Johnson. And Robert Johnson was talking about how in many of the black communities, we don't have broadband internet. And that is the reason why some of our kids are falling behind. And while I was watching that interview, drunk as hell, in the living room at 3 a.m., I was like, we're complaining about broadband internet in America. Meanwhile, in Tanzania, niggas don't have lights. Niggas don't have electricity to even turn on the light to read a book. So the people here are ignorant because of circumstance, and also possibly because I haven't been here a whole year or 2 years or 5 years to know everything that happens, but also probably they're failed by the schooling here. There's a lot of ignorance here as well. So that causes that disconnect because, you know, I'm a college educated black man with a bachelor's degree. There are not like only 14% of, like 24% actually, of Americans have a bachelor's degree, and an even smaller percentage of black American men have those college degrees. So I am a very, very privileged minority to have that sort of education and knowledge in my brain. So maybe that's why that disconnect exists. But I'll say this, and I'm gonna wrap it up.
No,
I'm sorry if I'm
okay.
talking a long time.
It's okay.
I'll wrap it up. Even if a Tanzanian didn't know shit about America, even if a Tanzanian didn't know shit about slavery, about the Arab slave trade or the transatlantic slave trade, if you knew at least the basics of your history of your country, you would know shit is fucked up, not because of other black people, but because of white imperial colonialism. And that should cause you enough to be not so jumbo with white European tourists. It should cause you enough to just say, hey, you want to go on safari? Cost is $7,000. That's it. Not jumbo in the streets, candy boo, all this other bullshit. The point I'm trying to make is, you motherfuckers, you Tanzanians, if you're watching this, just rape the white people for their money, but don't be so with white people in your face. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
You said that you are an educated black American, one of the few. It's just that because you are brought up this way, because thanks to your family, you are brought up with these views, but you cannot expect people who have experienced wealth from white people. They do not think the same way, and you cannot expect them to think the same way, even if they know the general prospects of their past. Because I believe the geography that you are born in affects a lot of your thinking. It affected a lot of my thinking, and I was lucky enough to be brought in my perspective when I met you. You know, you influenced me in such ways that I see the world different now. But I feel like it's a very different mentality that these people have here, what they have been seeing here. There are some people here that their income come only from white people, and then they also teach that to their kids. I feel like what this country needs is well-educated black educators that talk about the history, especially colonial history. I don't know. But I don't know how to end this video, but
yeah, no, I get what
I
you're
just
saying.
know that I agree with everything that you said, but I also say that you cannot expect some people here to see the world as you do. I wish they would.
I'm not expecting them to.
But instead of resenting, instead of thinking that they're ignorant, instead of thinking that they are mistreating African Americans,
they mistreat black people.
Yeah, instead of thinking they mistreat black people. Wait.
I'm sorry.
I know. I acknowledge that they mistreat black people.
No. I just want to say this. Because aside from, white people being here, right? Me being a foreign black person, when I go to the store, when I go try to get a taxi, when I go many places, and you've seen this with your own eyes.
Yeah.
You've seen this. When I go places and try to buy things, the price goes up just because they think I'm a foreigner. And that has nothing to do with white people. That goes against every principle of Pan-Africanism or this idea that blackness should be cherished or that we should try to take care of each other. At least give me the fair price. At least give me a fair deal. Like I said at the very beginning of this video, I've been in many third world countries. I'm a third world citizen by choice. By choice. I get paid not in US dollars. I get paid in Peruvian soles. I get paid in Chilean pesos. I don't make US dollars. I convert my money into US dollars, even though I am a US citizen, just like every other person, like 75% of the world population. So I am no different than any of the people here, any of the people who are trying to make a life for themselves. While you might say, well, they might not have education, they might not have exposure, they might not have all this. At the very least, if I was Namibian, if I was South African, if I was Nigerian, and I did not speak Swahili, there is no reason to charge me 3,000, 4,000 shillings more just because you think I got it. Just because you think I got it. That is wrong. That is wrong. That goes against all the ideas of Pan-Africanism. And some people might watch this and say, well, not everybody's a Pan-Africanist. Some people are just trying to come up. Some people are just trying to make an extra buck because life is hard here. Understandable. It's understandable that life is hard here. But it's morally and ethically wrong that this idea permeates society, that there are many people who think that way. Because me getting a fair deal on a price, me getting a fair deal on me trying to buy some cigarettes or a loaf of bread is the exception rather than the rule. Me paying more is the rule rather than the exception. And that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. Just because I'm a black foreigner, I pay more. Just like you would charge a white person who is a foreigner to pay more. Do you get what I'm saying? Also, another thing, I just want to say this. Some people might say the past is the past and let's move on. But the point is this: we cannot divorce our past from our present and also our future. And as Africans, as black people, as global black people, even if you derive all of your income from white people, even if every person who helps you pay for your house or your kids to go to school or the food on your table comes from white people, you can never, never, ever divorce how our situation is, how you came to be dependent on white people. Because I want to ask you this, Dennis, and I want you to answer this. I want you to answer this. Where in the world is an economy of tourism based on black people or non-white people?
I don't know.
No, think of it. Take some time to think of it.
Probably somewhere in Africa.
Where? Where do you think that Africans or other black people? You think so?
There should be an economy dependent on African people.
No, a tourist economy.
Then nowhere.
Nowhere. In the whole entire world, is there an economy based on tourism of non-white people that affects the minds of everybody who is involved in that industry and expands out from that?
Do you support Pan-Africanism?
Kind of, is the short answer. Kind of.
Explain just a little bit.
You might think I'm an easily disappointed person, an easily dissuaded person, but
I don't think that.
You might think, because I feel like you think, for example, in my life, right? I tried to be a rapper, right? And I gave up on that. You might think, oh, this person faced a hard time and he gave up on his dreams of being a rapper.
I don't know if you're speaking to your followers or me.
No, I'm speaking to you.
I don't think you're a person that
I heard you the other day say,
easily.
why do you give up so easily? Because I was talking about my mass shooting videos that I did on YouTube, right? I am not a person who gives up easily. I am a realist who realizes that when something doesn't work, you try something else rather than beating a dead horse over and over again. I try something for a few years. I try something for a few weeks. I try something for a few months and figure out what works and doesn't work in my life. When it comes to Pan-Africanism, ideally, and this goes to a lot of people, black people in the diaspora, we are more pro-African than I feel like Africans are. Because when you come to America, when you come to Brazil, when you come to the DR, when you come to many places, we don't overcharge you. Especially other black people. Fuck that. We might overcharge a cracker. We might overcharge a white person. Yeah, sure. But we will never, ever, ever overcharge our own people. We'll never fuck over our own people.
On that, by the way. I do not agree with you on that.
Tell me, why?
Because you are a tourist. You're not from this country. And I get that they're charging white people more. And, you know, I feel like that happens everywhere in the world. When you're a tourist, like I'm from Turkey and I'm from a very touristic place called Marmaris, and I've seen people overcharge other people a lot, and I've stand against it.
Have you seen other Turkish people overcharge other Turkish people?
But that's not the same.
Why is it not the same?
Because you're not Tanzanian.
I am black.
Yeah, but you're not Tanzanian.
The idea, what the point is, what I'm trying to say
you're
is,
not African.
No, the point, what I was trying to say is that in the diaspora, we don't overcharge each other because we all know that we are niggas. We know that we are all niggas wherever we come from. Black British person comes to the U.S., we are not fucking them over because we know in their country that they get treated just like us.
Even if I believe that, I feel like America in general do not overcharge tourists, that they have a set list of prices that they tell the same tourist. But in third world countries, just like Turkey, people make up prices to, just overcharge people.
I paid $11 for a scanner.
I know, like that. And they would do the same thing to an English person that they did it
but
to
they
you.
wouldn't do it to a Turkish person.
Yeah, but that's not the same.
Why is it not the same?
You are an African American. You are an American.
I am a black American first.
Okay, you are a black American. You are not from Africa, or you are not from Tanzania. You were not brought up the same way. People assume that you get paid in US dollars, even though you're not. So I do not agree with you on that. I'm sorry.
You can disagree.
A tourist is a tourist.
I'll just
no
say
matter
this.
Their skin color.
The point I was trying to make is, and you might disagree with this, we in the diaspora are more pro-black and pro-African than I feel like most Africans are. Because if we in the diaspora were in charge of Tanzania or Africa in general, we would not overcharge a black person to climb Mount Meru $1,000. Because what happens here is that the guide pays a Tanzanian price and pockets $700, $800 for the price to climb Meru. In the diaspora, we would not fuck over each other like how they do here. These people fuck over other black people and other Africans like it's no problem. In the diaspora, we do not do that.
You would not fuck over another black person because you grew up with all the discrimination that you faced in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not experience any discrimination growing up because they grew up with other Africans, right? And also what they saw was that white people have money. And so of course, they are gonna screw over white people, which is fine because every country does that has tourism. Turkey does that.
But where in your story, yes, they fuck over white people because they have money, but where does that make sense to fuck over other black people?
Because they know, as
know?
soon as you speak, they know that you are an American. And I feel like in their eyes, you are no different than a white American.
Maybe you don't realize that Tanzania is not a real thing. You're probably thinking of this country as, a bunch of people say, we are Tanzanian and we want Tanzania because that's what happened in your country. But that's not what happened here. That's not what happened anywhere in Africa. Anywhere black people are and we have some shit, it's not because we wanted that shit. It's just what we got. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, specifically white people, got what they got because of conquest, because of fighting, because of civil wars, because of claiming that shit. And that's what you're missing. So Pan-Africanism is not about the idea of Tanzania for Tanzanians, Haiti for Haitians. It's about black people have control over our shit because we are a specific group of people who have all been treated a specific way, whether we are the descendants of slaves or not. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but the point that you're missing is what I'm trying to say. You know how it feels to be treated different in other countries, but most people here do not know how that treatment feels in different countries because they have never been abroad.
Most people have never been abroad, but they still speak the ideas of Pan-Africanism. Most people have never left Tanzania. All they know of Africa is their own country. Even if I never left America, I would still maybe have this idea of Pan-Africanism, of global black people. We need to work together for some shit. It's not about your experience. It's about the idea of Pan-Africanism, about black people can have some shit where we can go and be cool. Because right now, nowhere in the world we can be cool and we can have shit and be cool. Every other group of people have that shit. We don't have that shit. You're saying like, oh, you're not Tanzanian, so don't expect to get treated a certain way. But I'm saying that I'm black and I have the right to be treated a certain way. The same way you, as a Turkish person, have the right to be treated a certain way in Turkey. And also, by extension, because you're white, you have the extension to be treated a certain way in certain places that you wouldn't expect to be treated any other way. The way that I would expect or any other black person would expect to be treated a certain way. You can go on a train in Europe and they don't even check your passport. I can't do that shit.
African Americans and any other Africans who grew up in another place other than Africa have different opinions of being black.
I would disagree. And while I will admit that what I will say now doesn't come from a place of knowledge, I would say that from presumption and anecdote and just knowing black people, I would find it very hard pressed that any Tanzanian does not identify their blackness as a part of their identity. And to make it clear for me, I identify as black first because nobody knows my nationality until I tell them or until they presume it. My blackness is my first and primary identity. Not because I chose it, not because I love it, not because I love blackness or anything like that. It's because that is how the world treats me and presumes me to be and will react to me as such. Even if a Tanzanian never left Tanzania and only dealt with black people all their life, because this economy, this society, this structure is so based around white approval and white comfortability in this place, because the tourism industry is based in this place and it plays a huge part of the economy here. There is no way that this many black people can see this many white people or foreigners come through this place and not identify themselves as black first, because there's no way that you can see all these rich white people come through here, spend millions of dollars, and your job is to make them comfortable, and it doesn't affect your mind, and it doesn't also make you think about your identity. So while you might say, yeah, they'd have different experiences, they have different things that they go through or that they went through in their history or whatever, the fact of the matter is, us in America are dealing with white privilege and white prosperity above our suffering. And here in Tanzania, they're dealing with white privilege and white power and white prosperity above their suffering. While there might be different circumstances and different nuances in the condition, it is the very same exact thing. You are literally seeing children walking around barefoot in the mud after rain. Meanwhile, white people are spending thousands of dollars to go on safari. We are seeing in Louisiana, we are seeing people living in rundown shacks with no water and no lights that were built hundreds of years ago. Meanwhile, white people are saying, we're gonna go to Colorado, to Aspen for the summer. This sort of shit, there's no difference. While there might be nuances in the situation, we are both seeing the same thing. So there's no way blackness doesn't tie us both together. But instead of tying us together, while African Americans and other black people, not just black Americans, are seeing in the diaspora that we need to come together to make some shit, Africans are saying, we're gonna fuck over everybody. We're gonna fuck over everybody because, you know what? In America, they're all the same. They're all rich. In Europe, they're all rich. In whatever, they're all rich. When it should cross their mind, maybe, them niggas in France, them niggas in Belgium, them niggas in Brazil, them niggas in Argentina, them niggas in America, them niggas in Canada are probably going through the same shit that we are.
I recognize the common enemy, but I'm just saying the process is different. But anyway, I'm gonna end this because it's been an hour.
It's been an hour,
yes.
bro. It feels like 10 minutes.
I'm gonna finish this video. So tell me if you have any last words.
I really want to say something profound. I really want to say something deep. The last thing I want to just say is that nobody will ever understand what blackness means to me.